Kermit, where are you going?
Oh, I'm going to the store. Don't worry. I'll be back.
Hello everybody, welcome back to ACR, Action Comedy Review. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Last Action Hero. Came out June 18th, 1993, and grossed $137.3 million in the box office, with a budget of $85 million. It was distributed by Columbia Pictures, and was directed by John McTiernan. Cast is Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater and himself, Austin O'Brien as Danny Madigan, and Charles Dance as Benedict. The movie is 131 minutes long, which is about 2 hours and 11 minutes. But anyways, let's get into the review.
Hamlet is taking out the trash.
The movie opens up with a Jack Slater movie where this villain, the Ripper, has kids hostage on top of an elementary school. Jack shows up acting all cool like Arnold usually is in movies, and Jack tries to negotiate with the Ripper because he has his son hostage as well. Then he's told to get rid of all of his weapons. He does so and then tosses a fake grenade to the Ripper, but he sees through the plan and sees that it's a fake grenade. But turns out there was a knife in the grenade and Jack's son stabs the Ripper. So then Jack jumps down to grab his gun and shoots at them, but then it cuts to reality because camera started getting out of focus and Danny's yelling to get the projector back in focus so he can finish the movie. So then he heads up to the projector room where we're introduced to Nick, the owner of the theater.
Oh, I owned a theater once!
Really?
Well...
Why do you always fall for his lies?
He fixes it and then tells Danny that he could get him an early viewing of the new Jack Slater movie, if he hurries to school because he's late. Danny goes to school and he watches a film, but then he starts a daydream where one of the characters, Hamlet, is Jack Slater, and it turns into an action movie, and I thought it was really funny. Then it goes to Danny's house, we figure out his dad died, and then his mother leaves for work, and Danny tries to leave to go see the early viewing of the new Jack Slater movie, but then a criminal comes in and he points a knife at him. Then he tries stealing some things in the house, but nothing in there is valuable.
Oh, that reminds me of that time I lived with a bunch of warlocks!
There more to that joke or what?
What was I saying again? Oh well.
Danny's at a police station and he's told to head straight home after, but he goes to see Nick instead. But before he shows the movie to Danny, he tells him about this magic ticket that he got from Harry Houdini when his father owned the theater. He gives Danny the other half of the ticket and he tells him that it never really worked for him, but then he plays the movie. It's playing and we're introduced to the villain. The villains are Benedict, a sharpshooting assassin, and Tony Vivaldi, who's a mob boss. Tony tortures Jack's second cousin Frank to get info from him, but that doesn't go well. And then Jack shows up with two other cops after they leave, and then Jack talks to Frank, he gets some information that's fake, but then he blows up and the two cops die, but Jack just got some scrapes. Some goons show up and then he gets into a car chase with them.
Usually when I do that, it leaves a hole.
Danny's ticket starts glowing while the movie's playing, and then some dynamite from the movie comes out of the screen and it blows up and launches him into the screen. Now Danny's in the back of Jack's car and he tells him to stay calm and that he's got this. Jack loses one of the cars that's chasing after him and he hides out for a bit till they get found, and then they play a little game of chicken that gets the other dudes killed. Jack takes Danny to the police station and Lieutenant Decker starts yelling at Jack after he's called into his office. Danny sees an animated cat named Whiskers, who's played by Danny DeVito, and tries to prove that this is a movie, and then starts talking about plot points and stuff from the other Jack Slater movies. Decker thinks he's suspicious because he knows too much, and he knows about literally everything here, so they interrogate him. And Decker thinks that he's a good partner to tag along with Jack, so he forces Jack to have him tag along.
Dear God, I feel like it's an opposite for me.
Ah, Kermit, I know you love it.
No, I don't.
Danny tries to prove that this is a movie a few more times, but then he leads Jack to the villain's base. They meet Benedict, but he switched out his eye with a different one, and while they're leaving, Danny tells a little information about him, so then Benedict and Tony are a little concerned. Jack and Danny head back to Jack's home, and we're introduced to Jack's daughter, Whitney. Jack goes for a little drive, and we figured out what happened at the beginning of the movie after the camera lost focus. Turns out that he shot at the Ripper, and as the Ripper was falling off the building, he grabbed Jack's son and they died. Danny already knows about all this, and while him and Whitney are talking about it, Benedict shows up with a bunch of goons. He then takes Danny's wallet and pushes for answers from him. Finds the ticket, and Whitney beats up one of the goons, then points a gun at Benedict. But then Jack shows up with some kid as a decoy, and then they have a huge fight and Benedict runs off. Jack chases after him, and Danny wants to see all the action, but then he just proves to be a distraction after he flies into a bush, and then Benedict gets away. And then when Benedict is back at the mansion, he figures out what the ticket can actually do after he switches his eye.
Oh, I have a glass eye. Oh, wait.
Police show up at Jack's house, and one of them finds a glass eye that turns out to be a bomb, and it blows up. Then it cuts to the police station where Decker is yelling at Jack and Danny. Then he fires Jack. Jack packs up his desk, and they head back to Jack's other home. He shoots a dude in his closet, and he says that there's always one in there. Danny points out all the movie cliches, and he brings up the plan that Tony was talking about at the beginning of this Jack Slater movie. They figure out the plan and head to a funeral. They try to get in, but quickly figure out that John was a traitor. And there's a power struggle with all of them, because they get the gun, then they don't. And this keeps happening, then Whiskers comes out of nowhere and shoots John in the back.
Wow, Danny DeVito coming in with the save.
Danny takes control of a crane while Jack grabs the corpse bomb, and some fighting happens. Then Jack gets caught in an elevator while Danny has the bomb hanging by the crane. Danny saves Jack from the helicopter, so then Jack hops onto the crane, and the bomb is about to explode. See a tar pool, so Jack comes up with an idea of dropping down there with the bomb. Then he does that, and he stops the explosion from happening. And it cuts to Benedict and Tony at their mansion. Benedict starts hatching a plan with the tickets, power, then kills Tony. But then Jack drives in with Danny and they try to get the ticket, but Benedict gets tossed into the real world. So then Jack and Danny follow.
I have murdered a man, and I want to confess. Shut up down there!
Back in the theater, and they chase after Benedict, so then Danny tells Jack that things are not the same in this world. And then they get into a car chase. Try to play a game of chicken, but they actually crash this time. Jack survives the crash, but the other dude's dead. But then it shows that Benedict got away. And then Jack sees a poster that has Arnold on it, and he starts to freak out after going back to the theater to see Nick. And he gives Jack a pep talk, then they head to Danny's house. But then after that, it cuts to Benedict, and he gets a reality check after he sees a murder, then he kills a dude himself. Next day, Danny wakes up and figures out that his mother turned Jack soft. Then Jack brings up a theory that Benedict could be using the ticket to bring other villains from movies into the real world. And it cuts to Benedict in the cafe, and it turns out that he's talking to the Ripper, and he wants him to kill the actual Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, Arnold and my dad know each other.
Jack and Danny fight a bit, but then they figure out that Benedict's trying to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger. It goes to the premiere of the new Jack Slater movie, and it shows us the real Arnold and some actors from the movie. The Ripper shows up, and they think he's just a person in a costume. Jack and Danny get there, and the Ripper's agent shows up, and he gets him in, but then he gets killed.
No, I could get past this guy.
Jack asks where he's sitting, and then while he's going there, it shows the Ripper going to the upper floor while Jack goes to the lower. Danny goes to the upper, and he sees that the Ripper's about to kill Arnold, so then he yells to Jack that the Ripper was brought back. But then Jack tries to shoot him, and then Arnold tackles Jack, and the Ripper gets away, then kidnaps Danny. So then Jack runs off to save him. Like the beginning of the movie, they're on the rooftop, and they repeat the same bit, and the Ripper points this out, and then he just skips ahead to the part where he throws him off the building. Then he throws his axe at Jack, and Jack takes the axe, then cuts a wire, and it electrifies the water and kills the Ripper because it's raining. So then Jack goes to save Danny, saves him, but then Benedict shows up, and he shoots Jack, then Danny tosses a gun to Jack, and then he kills Benedict by shooting him in the eye because it's an explosive. Then it blows up.
Good, I hated that guy.
Ticket starts to glow, then it brings out Death from one of the theaters. Jack is getting rushed to the hospital. Danny pulls out a gun and tries to get him back to the theater. That fails, so he has to drive, and he drives through the front of the theater. Then he tells Nick to get the projector ready. As they're trying to get him back into the movie, Death shows up, and then he brings up the fact that Jack isn't on the list, but Danny is, and he dies a grandfather. Danny asks for his help, but Death brings up the fact that they can just use the other half of the ticket to get him back in. So then Danny searches through a bunch of them, he finds it, and then it starts electrifying the screen, and it fires up the projector. So then Jack and Danny get back into the movie again, and Whiskers finds them and gets back up. Danny and Jack have their final exchange, but then some help arrives, and they just say it's a flesh wound. Danny and Nick watch the rest of the movie, and Jack tells off Decker and uses all of his newfound knowledge against him. And then Danny and Nick leave, and it shows Jack driving off into the sunset, and then the movie's over.
Dear God, finally, this movie was 2 hours long.
Let's see. I give Last Action Hero 8.5 Arnolds out of 10.
Let's go!
I actually thought this movie was good. Now, it might not be the most popular opinion, but I still liked it, because I like to call myself somewhat of an Arnold fan. Might be a little biased here, but yeah, I still liked the movie. I thought the acting was really good, and I actually thought it was funny at times. I liked all the different references to other Arnold movies, and it was a very good movie, because it had the right amount of action, the right amount of comedy. So obviously, here's the review. Movie dragged a bit here and there, but for the most part, it was fast-paced, and it kept it going. Some jokes just weren't funny, but again, there were jokes that I liked. My only real complaint is the length of the film, because I mean, 2 hours and 11 minutes is very long, but I mean, that's just a small gripe. But anyways, those are just my opinions. Tell me what you thought about the movie in the comments section below. Tell me if you're gonna see it, or if you've seen it. You know, all that good stuff. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and follow me on my social media pages, which are in the description. But anyways, see you next time on the final episode of ACR, where I review Kung Fu Hustle. Till then, see you next time. Have a good one.